Hey everybody, Dr. Zach Long here, Doctor of Physical Therapy, lead faculty for the Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete Division within the Institute of Clinical Excellence. I'm coming to you from my garage in Charlotte, North Carolina today, where it is incredibly cold. In-laws have my space heater, so this one might go a little faster than our usual talks go, because I'm freezing right now. Quick announcement before we get started talking about today's topic of maximal recoverable volume. We've added a few more live weekend intensive courses within the Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete Division. So if you're wanting to spend a weekend moving barbells, moving weights, and learning how to analyze athletes as they move with load and provide top-notch quality care to fitness athletes, you want to check out those live talks. We also just added 2 more online advanced concepts in the Clinical Management of the Fitness Athlete lectures online or courses online. You can check all those out on ptonice.com. So today we're going to be talking about maximal recoverable volume, which is a very important concept to use with any athlete and something that I find incredibly valuable to use with the CrossFitters, Olympic lifters, powerlifters that I work with. So there's a lot of research that we've talked about in the past on the PT on Ice Daily Show, and we talk about quite a bit within the ice community as a whole. Tim Gabbett's research on training volume, where Tim Gabbett has basically shown that if we have an acute increase or decrease in our training volume compared to our chronic workload ratios, we're going to have a significantly increased risk of injury. So if we look at what you did over the past week and we compare that to what you did on the previous 4 weeks, if that training load increased significantly, then your risk of injury is going to go up, I believe his research showed, by 51%. Now, it's really good to have that information and to be able to calculate somebody's acute to chronic workload ratio and tell them, all right, I actually think the reason that you got hurt isn't these false beliefs you have about having a quad dominant squat or your glutes aren't activating. The reason you have this patellofemoral pain is because you went from squatting 1 time a week to doing a program such as a Smolov squat cycle, and now you're squatting 3 times a week. You had an acute spike in your training volume, and that led to the overloading and sensitization of these tissues in your patellofemoral. Very valuable information to have. And when you're working with somebody like a runner, that's really easy information to use. You know, a runner comes in and they know, all right, last week I ran a 5-mile run, an 8-mile run, a 10-mile run, and a 2 mile of speed work. Something like that. You can really easily calculate what their training volume was. And usually they have that written out somewhere in their training log, things like that. So it makes calculating that acute to chronic workload ratio fairly easily in that population. The problem becomes when we're talking about a CrossFit athlete, for example, who one day might be working up to a 3-rep max back squat. The next day their WOD might have them doing 100 bodyweight squats. 2 days later, they're doing wall balls where they're squatting down and throwing a 20-pound medicine ball overhead. How do we calculate that training volume with the same movement pattern but different stimuli, different loading within that movement pattern? It becomes a lot dirtier. And one way within the Advanced Concepts course that we talk about measuring that is to use session-based RPE. So you basically would have an athlete come back and 20 to 30 minutes after their workout, according to research studies, you have them look back at that workout, and they'll tell you, on a scale of 0 to 10, what was your rating of perceived exertion for that workout? We usually wait 20 to 30 minutes afterwards because it gives them time to rest and relax and actually get a true reflection of what the workout was, rather than what they just felt like at the very, very end. So based on that, you could say, all right, Monday's workout was an 8 RPE, Tuesday a 7, Wednesday a 9, Thursday a whatever, and you can come up with a weekly total session-based RPE, and then you can kind of apply that to Gabbett's formula and look at acute to chronic workload ratios. The problem is that's a little dirty. It's not perfect, it's not bad, but it's a little difficult, and a CrossFitter doesn't come to us, or if a CrossFitter comes to me and I'm looking at their training volume for the last 4 weeks, it's hard for me to say, all right, 4 weeks ago, what was this workout on an RPE scale? They're not going to be able to do that. So in the clinic, sometimes with CrossFitters, that isn't quite as useful. So what I like to pull out is discussions around this theory of maximal recoverable volume. And I'm going to give all the credit to this to Dr. Mike Iersertel and James Hoffman. They wrote a great book, ebook called How Much Should I Train? That covers a lot of this. You can also find some podcasts with both of them discussing this topic as well. They work for a company called Renaissance Periodization. And they came up with this concept, and I think it's really good. I think it really applies to our CrossFitters, Olympic lifters, powerlifters really well. So let's get into some definitions underneath maximal recoverable volume. The first definition we need to understand is minimal effective volume. That's the absolute least amount of volume that an athlete can do and still see appreciable gains over the course of the year, for example. So if you're an Olympic lifter and you can clean and jerk 200 pounds, the minimal effective volume is what will over the next year lead you to lifting 201 pounds 1 year from now. Now, obviously, for most athletes, they don't want to train at their minimal effective volume because that's them getting the absolute least out of their training as is possible. The next thing that we need to discuss is their maximal recoverable volume. So that's the maximum amount of volume you could do in a week, for example, and then come back the next week and be recovered back to your baseline. Remember, that's just back to the baseline. So we got this principle in strength and conditioning called stimulus recovery adaptation. We provide a stimulus to the human body. It then actually leads to our body being weakened. So if we did a heavy squat workout, for the next few days we wouldn't be able to put out as much squat weight as we would beforehand because our body has been kind of overloaded a little bit. And then it takes some time for our body to recover. And what we really want to happen is we get the stimulus, we then recover, and then our body has enough resources left to then adapt and become stronger so that the next week or the next cycle and training that you do, you can squat more weight or more volume or more whatever than you could in this current cycle. So we want stimulus, recovery, and adaptation. Now, maximal recoverable volume refers to when you get the stimulus, your body recovers, but the stimulus that you applied is so much so that your body uses all of its available resources to just recover back to baseline. It doesn't have any more energy left to adapt. And that's a problem because you're doing all of this work and you're not growing out of it. You're just getting back to baseline. And so we don't want to be at this minimal effective volume, which is too low, and we don't always want to be at this maximal recoverable volume because it's too high. Now, there are certain times in the training cycle we might throw something like that in, but we don't always want to be at this maximal recoverable volume because we're in essence wasting our time. We'll come back to MRV in just a second. Where we want to be is at people's maximal adaptive volume, which falls somewhere between the minimum effective volume and maximal recoverable volume. That's the amount of volume that's going to lead to optimal gains. And that's kind of a moving target. We'll talk about some factors that influence that in a minute. But the important thing here to think about from a theoretical perspective is that maximal recoverable volume. Because we see a lot of CrossFitters training at and above that maximal recoverable volume. If you actually look at the programming that the CrossFit Level 1 and CrossFit Headquarters puts out as far as what most people should do when training for fitness, it's actually fairly low volume. Where one day they might do a strength piece and it's just one strength exercise. The next day they do a couplet, a triplet, take a day off. Next day they're doing a 5K run, another couplet, another triplet. What we see in most CrossFit gyms is they'll do that strength piece, but then they have a Metcon. The next day they do a couplet, but they also have a strength piece with it. The next day they do a triplet, but they also have a gymnastics piece with it. So what most CrossFit gyms are doing is putting a lot more volume on CrossFit than what CrossFit Headquarters would recommend. Then CrossFit Headquarters is going to recommend either a 2-on, 1-off, I think it's 2-on, 1-off training cycle, or a 5-on, 2-off training cycle. And what we see from a lot of CrossFitters is that they're going 6 or 7 days a week, sometimes even doing multiple workouts. So the volume that they're training at is far beyond what CrossFit Headquarters recommends. And I believe a lot of times people are training beyond their maximal recoverable volume. And so when do I have this conversation? Well, I'm always looking at specific details within somebody's training cycle as far as maybe why they're injured. But when somebody comes to me for an injury 1 month, we rehab through that shoulder pain, anterior shoulder pain. The next month they're coming back to me and they got some patellofemoral pain. The next month they're coming back, they got some hip impingement. Then I'm like, all right, something's going on here, Jamie. You've been doing CrossFit for 2 years now, and in the last 4 months, I've seen you 3 times for 3 different issues. Let's have a discussion on what your overall training program looks like. Let's look at those lifestyle factors that might influence your maximal recoverable volume. And let's see, maybe you're just training too much right now and your body's not recovering. But before we make that decision, let's look at some performance metrics, because CrossFit's all about the observable, measurable, repeatable data. So let's look at what was your back squat 6 months ago? What's it today? What was your Fran time last year? What is it now? And a lot of times you'll start picking up on people who've been working their tails off and they're not making significant progress across the board in their CrossFit metrics. And if you combine the injuries that they've been rehabbing from and the lack of progress in their workouts, you have a strong amount of data to suggest to this athlete that, hey, maybe you're just training above your maximal recoverable volume. You're using all of your available resources just to get back to baseline. Let's try something different for a month or two. Let's actually take you down. Maybe we go from 6 workouts a week to 4 workouts a week. If they're hesitant to that, then maybe we say, all right, we're going to go and we're going to work out 4 days a week, but let's cut out on 1 or 2 of those days, let's cut out the Metcon. Your aerobic base is great, Jane, but you need a little bit more strength. So let's cut the Metcon out, let's get rid of that volume. Or maybe they're not open to that, maybe you just say, hey, Jane, you're going to go 6 days a week, but 2 of those days per week, I just want you to go in and cruise. I want you to get moving. I want you to think of it as an active recovery day. You're going to get a sweat going, but you're not going to crush yourself. And a lot of times that'll help. If that doesn't help, then we're also going to go down a discussion of training optimally versus having a good workout. And most athletes don't realize that there's a big difference between a workout and a good training session. So a workout is an individual session. And any horrible trainer or coach can write a very, very difficult workout. That's not hard. You can crush anybody any day of the week. Now, it's not a good training session if it then has an athlete injured or not able to recover good enough to get a good stimulus out of their next workout. So what we want to always be focused on is the long-term picture. The long-term picture is good training and consistently having good workouts that slowly build on top of each other so that 1 month, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years from now, you're training healthily and you're steadily progressing. So that's kind of the role I'll go with down that maximal recoverable volume discussion with athletes when I feel that they're just doing more than their body's currently able to recover from. We can also have some discussions on lifestyle factors that may be impacting their maximal recoverable volume. So if somebody is sleeping less, that's been shown to decrease your ability to recover. Some studies have shown that in as little as 1 night of poor sleep, men's testosterone levels drop 50% just from 1 night of poor sleep. If an athlete goes on a diet and they're trying to cut a little weight because they're in that hypocaloric state, their maximal recoverable volume is going to be decreased. If an athlete is a master's athlete, their maximal recoverable volume is going to be less than an intermediate athlete. There's a lot of different factors like that will influence an individual's maximal recoverable volume. And these are things that most of us as physical therapists know already. If you don't know it, consider looking at the Applied Prevention and Population Health course through Mike Eisenhart, where they talk about so many of those lifestyle factors that are impacting people's health. Listen to some of his previous PT on ICEs, and you'll get some good ideas of talking points that you can have with your clients and athletes. If you want to learn more about maximal recoverable volume, I really highly suggest checking out Dr. Mike Israetel and James Hoffman's book, How Much Should I Train? We also discuss this a lot in our different clinical management and fitness athlete courses. But please feel free to hit me up on the messages here below this video. Hit me up on the barbellphysio.com as well if you want to start a discussion over there as well. Thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day.